The Nazis controlled everything in Warsaw: the food, the walls, the names of the dead. But for 4 years, one woman with a toolbox and a set of fake papers moved through the cracks of that control, pulling children out of hell one by one. They never knew how close they came to not making it. Neither did she. Warsaw, 1942. The ghetto had been standing for 2 years. The Nazis had herded over 400,000 Jewish men, women, and children behind a 10-foot brick wall in the middle of the city. By the time Irena Sendler began her work in earnest, people inside were dying at a rate of over 5,000 a month. Not from bullets, from starvation, from typhus, from despair. The Germans had calculated the food rations to provide roughly 180 calories per person per day. Slow death, by design. Irena was 32 years old. She was a Catholic Polish social worker employed by the Warsaw Social Welfare Department, and she had a pass that allowed her inside the ghetto walls to conduct sanitation inspections. The Nazis were terrified of typhus spreading beyond the wall. That fear became her weapon. She had been quietly helping Jewish families since the German occupation began in 1939, forging documents, hiding people, moving money. But when the scale of what was happening inside the ghetto became clear to her, she made a decision that most people would have been physically incapable of making. She decided to get the children out. Not some of them, as many as she possibly could. She recruited a network of around 24 conspirators, most of them women, nurses, social workers, tram drivers, priests, nuns. Each one risked the same penalty as Irena: death. In Nazi-occupied Poland, hiding a Jewish person, feeding a Jewish person, or helping one escape, carried an automatic death sentence, not just for the individual, but for their entire family. Irena knew this, so did every person she recruited. The methods they used were extraordinary in their ingenuity and almost unbearable in what they required. Infants were sedated with mild drugs and placed in the bottom of toolboxes, covered with rags. Older children were hidden under stretchers in ambulances, sewn inside burlap sacks, or tucked inside coffins with air holes. One of Irena's colleagues trained a dog to bark loudly at German checkpoints, masking any sounds a hidden child might make. The dog saved lives. Getting the children out was only the first problem. Once outside the wall, each child needed a new identity, a false name, false baptismal papers, a new family or an orphanage willing to take them without asking too many questions. Irena coordinated this with extraordinary precision, placing children with Catholic families across Warsaw and its surrounding villages. She taught older children to memorize Polish prayers, Polish customs, how to cross themselves, how to behave in church. One wrong word, one moment of confusion, and they were dead. But Irena carried something the Nazis never knew about. In the back garden of a house on Lelichowska Street, beneath an apple tree, she buried glass jars. Inside each jar were scraps of paper, tightly folded, written in her careful hand. The real name of every child, their parents' names, where they'd come from, who they were before the war remade them into someone else. She buried over 2,500 names in those jars. She was determined that if any of them survived, they would know the truth of who they were. In October 1943, someone talked. The Gestapo came for her at dawn. They searched her house, found nothing, but they took her anyway. What followed in Pawiak prison over the next several weeks was systematic and savage. They broke her feet. They broke her legs. They beat her repeatedly, trying to extract the names of her network and the locations of the children. Irena Sendler did not give them a single name. She was sentenced to death. On the morning of her scheduled execution, a Zagata operative bribed a German guard. Irena was listed in official Nazi records as executed. Her name appeared on public lists of the dead posted around Warsaw, but she was alive, left in a field on the edge of the city, barely able to walk, her legs shattered. She went back to work. She continued coordinating the network from hiding until the end of the war, never stopping, never leaving Warsaw. When the war ended, she dug up the jars herself. She handed the names to Jewish welfare organizations in the hope of reuniting children with surviving family members. Most of the parents were already dead, murdered at Treblinka. The reunions were few, the grief was immense, but the children were alive. In 2007, Irena Sendler was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. She didn't win. She died in 2008, aged 98, in a Warsaw apartment. On her wall hung a photograph of the apple tree. Irena Sendler's story is a precise answer to the question of what ordinary people do when faced with extraordinary evil. She had no army, no power, no protection. She had a job title and a conscience. The jars under the apple tree are a reminder that identity, stripped away by force, is still worth preserving, still worth risking everything to protect. In a world that still produces refugees, still produces walls, still produces people whose names someone is trying to erase, that reminder is not historical. It's current. He was 11 years old when they took him, 9 years later when they finally found him. He didn't want to come back. Next time, the story of Herman Lehmann.